One of the coolest things about early 90s game development was that most game consoles got their own versions of certain titles. When you played Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo, it was not the same game as Hyperstone Heist on the Sega Genesis. When you played Aladdin on one, it was a completely different game on the other. Heck, even when something as simple as an arcade port came along like Mortal Kombat, the differences in hardware and developers meant the two games looked and sounded nothing alike. This type of thing also happened with the games based on the Adventures of Batman and Robin animated series. The Super Nintendo version launched in 1994 and was developed by Konami. This was a single-player side-scrolling action-adventure that actually had Batman not just beating up bad guys, but also using his gadgets for some detective work. It was a solid game that stayed true to the show and its art style. Sega scored the Batman and Robin license for its hardware, and they set forth to make unique games for nearly every platform they had. The Sega CD version was actually a forward-scrolling combat racer that pitted you against Gotham's worst criminals while piloting the Batmobile and Batwing. While not the best game on the system, it definitely was a welcome change to the full-motion video titles that flooded its library. The Game Gear version was an entirely different game from there. Developed by Novo Trade of Echo the Dolphin fame, this was a pretty standard action platformer. It's slow and clunky with a terribly choppy pace, but I wouldn't call it a terrible game when compared to its portable contemporaries. It actually had incredible color and detail for an 8-bit release, and the art stayed quite faithful to the TV show. It came on a 4 megabit cartridge and actually has quite a few stages. But among these Sega releases, it's the Sega Genesis version that often garners the most attention. Developed by Clockwork Tortoise, a startup made by former Malibu Interactive employees that had worked on Batman Returns previously, it was released in June of 1995. It too was a completely different game using the license of the TV show. It was a run and gun that was extremely difficult, and it had some of the best special effects I've ever seen on the platform. In this episode, we are going to take a look at it, see if it's as good as you've heard, and talk about whether it's worth playing today. I hope you guys enjoy my review of the Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis. The story here has Mr. Freeze up to his old tricks in trying to turn Gotham City into a giant icicle. He knows he'll need some help, so he breaks out some of Arkham's worst criminals to keep the Caped Crusader at bay. The opening cinematics are gorgeous and really keep in line with the art from the TV show. From there, you get to choose either Batman or Robin in a single-player game, or you can run as both in two-player co-op. As I mentioned earlier, the Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Sega Genesis is a run and gun loaded with action. Rarely do you get a breather where you can just stop and have no enemies attacking you. There is a constant bombardment that never lets you rest, never lets you get your bearings, and always keeps you moving. To combat this onslaught, Batman and his sidekick Robin have a few different weapons to employ. There are batarangs, shurikens, and bolas. These are represented by the blue, red, and green disc icons you can pick up during gameplay. These discs do cycle in color so you can choose which one you want. With each one you collect, your weapon power goes up, typically increasing the size or spread to hit more enemies per shot. Your attack also comes with a charge meter that determines its damage potential. Rapid fire means your attacks are weak, but wait for a full charge and you'll do much more damage. Also collectible are skulls, which destroy everything on the screen, a supercharger, which allows your meter to fill up much quicker, and extra lives. Also important are the appearance of blue hearts, which do restore your life. Being able to survive for extended periods of time requires you to know when and where the blue hearts will appear, and your quickness to collect them before they fly off the screen. This one also isn't just a side-scrolling shooter in the strictest sense. There are also overhead flying levels that are much more akin to a traditional shoot-'em-up. Like the run and gun segments, enemies and their attacks flood the screen and keep you basically running for your life the entire way. Boss encounters are varied and extremely challenging themselves, often needing many play sessions to master. The Adventures of Batman and Robin only has 4 levels, each one having you face the Joker, Two-Face, the Mad Hatter, and Mr. Freeze in that order. Fortunately, each level is loaded with 3 to 5 stages and multiple boss fights. It makes for one heck of an unforgiving challenge that promises a ton of replay value if you want to see the ending. The visuals of this are nothing short of astounding. The 16 megabit cartridge holds some of the most impressive special effects you'll ever see this hardware pull off. Smooth sprite scaling, sprite rotation, line scrolling, transparencies. I mean, nearly every new area offers something new to gawk at, and there were times my jaw was on the floor because I had never seen the Genesis do anything like it. The impressive nature of these special effects tend to overshadow the base graphics, which are still pretty good themselves. The animation of every sprite is smooth and in line with the better games of the era. Just watching Batman run and climb is a joy to behold. This game also uses the Genesis shadow and highlight mode to some pretty impressive results. The colors here really pop while still retaining that dark and gritty feel from the animated series. It's also pretty impressive the amount of stuff that gets put on the screen at once. It has a few ticks of slowdown here and there, but for the most part, this runs fast and smooth the entire way through. There really isn't much to knock about its visuals. I mean, as far as technically impressive efforts go, you have to respect the work that went into this. Clockwork Tortoise almost makes it seem like the Genesis can do this stuff in hardware, it's so smooth and seamless. The first time you see those city streets moving from way up high, or see that eye-popping scaling, it'll quickly redefine your opinions of what the Genesis was capable of and how other developers could have done so much more. The composer for The Adventures of Batman and Robin was Jesper Kyd, and he fills this one with some pretty hardcore tunes. I really dig some of it, but there are some entries that come off a tad too abrasive. I think that this is a soundtrack that will have people that love it, and will have those that can't stand it. It sort of reminds me of Streets of Rage 3, honestly, and your taste in this stuff is gonna have a pretty profound effect on your enjoyment of it. Let's have a listen and see what you think. Before I say another word, let's address the elephant in the room, the difficulty. It's real, and it's such a potent part of this game's experience, it will affect more of you than not. This is not a casual game, and if you think just a few sessions will get you to the end, think again. On my best play sessions, I will often sift through its 6 continues, just getting to the 3rd level to face the Mad Hatter. I've only ever made it to the 4th stage a few times before I give up the ghost and it's game over. I have never legitimately beaten this game start to finish without the level select. Getting good at this game requires time and dedication, knowing where to get your life back, knowing where the extra lives are, and maximizing your weapons and attacks to their fullest potential. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time can see a life bar decimated in seconds. There really is nothing quite like this on the Genesis in terms of intensity. Every step is a fight for position and survival. It's definitely not the type of game to play to relax. But even with all that said, The Adventures of Batman and Robin has a replayability that makes you want to do better. It drives you to see the next stage or defeat that boss that just wrecked you and stole your last continue. No doubt you'll eat many deaths trying to learn its strategies, but it's fun to try the different methods of survival, finding which weapon is best for which situation. When a game can punish you like that, but keep you coming back for more, it's doing something right. Add in the excellent visuals that make you want to see as much of the game as possible, and you have a tough but addictive game that does more right than it does wrong. Aside from the difficulty, I also want to bring up the repetitive nature of the enemies. Sometimes you will face long stretches of fighting the same bad guy to the point of ridiculousness. Some areas double down on the same two enemies for so long, you'll be asking yourself, are you doing something wrong? Combined with the difficulty, many will throw their hands up in disgust because this is simply just too much. But if you give it your best, you'll definitely be rewarded with a title that gives back just as much as it takes. If you are in the camp that can't stand this game, don't worry. It was divisive even back at the time of its release. A quick look at the media of the time reveals many publications hammering the fun factor because of its incredible difficulty. Electronic Gaming Monthly praised its action and visuals, but came down hard on its difficulty and repetitive enemies. GamePro pretty much did the same, even going so far as to bemoan the audio as well. Game players loved the graphics but pretty much destroyed it in every other category. Next Generation absolutely eviscerated it with a 1-star review, making it sound like the worst game ever made. And before you go on about Next Generation being down on two-dimensional games, they gave the Flintstones on the Super Nintendo 3 stars in the same magazine. Even the usually friendly Sega Pro was lukewarm to it and made it clear they were expecting more. I think one of the big issues with The Adventures of Batman and Robin is the fact that difficulty completely takes away from the feeling of being a superhero. Even the lowliest of enemy here can wreck your health bar, and you never feel powerful or in control of anything. Leaving Batman in a position of running for his life constantly kinda undermines the property itself. So while I would argue that a run and gun is not the best venue for a Batman title, I still feel this is quite the solid effort even if the IP is somewhat misplaced. Your expectations going in will make or break this experience. If you think you are gonna come in as the Dark Knight and spread fear and terror to the criminals of Gotham, boy do you have a rude awakening coming your way. But if you go in expecting the fight of your life that gives you some of the best visual effects on the Genesis, you may come to appreciate this one as much as I do. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.